Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest edition of the Gersnet Podcast, hosted by myself, Craig Gray, where we're going to be reviewing yesterday's match against Motherwell. Just a little bit of apologies before we start. Obviously, we were due to be going on last night, but because of unforeseen circumstances, we've had to put it forward today. But we are here in the end, and that's all that matters. Joined here tonight in the hot seat with Ross Bennett and Iain Duff. I believe, Ross, this is the first time that we've been on together, so hopefully you can survive the show by the end of it. How you doing? How you doing this evening, mate?
No, I'm very good. It's a shame we don't have something more interesting to talk about than Rangers' trip to Motherwell, but no, I'm looking forward to it.
No, absolutely. And Iain Duff as well. I know we've been on a couple of times. How are you doing this evening?
Yeah, not too bad. Only problem is I've had to think about this Motherwell game for another day, but I hope to put it in my mind last night.
I know. It wasn't a good performance, as we will soon talk about. But just before we get into it as well, of course, this is the Independent Rangers podcast made for fans, by fans, and all content is free over at www.gersnet.co.uk, where you can go on and access the forum, articles, social media, this podcast, of course, and the history archive. So thank you once again to our guests for joining us at home. And again, just another wee message from our sponsors before we go into it, and that's our first one from Forest Precision Engineering. They're a subcontract Glasgow-based engineering company who have been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for many years, and we're absolutely delighted that they're backing our podcast. You can get them over at forestprecisioneng.com. You can also visit the Forest Precision Engineering Executive Lounge. That's a stunning new hospitality area within the historic main stand at Ibrox. And for more information on how to book this unique and intimate space, you can email the club over at hospitality@rangers.co.uk. Well, as we mentioned there, we have to talk about that Motherwell game yesterday. It was a win. A win's a win. Having chips, as Emma Dodds likes to say sometimes, which I suppose is the most important thing. But Ross, I'll start with you. Obviously, it was a poor performance, but it was a massive win. I think one of the things that I took away from it was probably just, again, the lack of identity regarding Gio's tactics and his playing style. He's been the manager now for nearly a year, and to me, it has become a wee bit of a concern. Is it as much as a concern for you as it is for me and maybe other people?
Yeah, I think it is, and the reason I say that is when that team came out yesterday just before lunchtime, I looked at it and went, oh, actually, he's gone with an incredibly dynamic attacking side. You know, Matondo and Tillman and Kent and Arfield. That's a real departure from the criticism and the complaints I've had of Gio up to this point in the season is, why is he playing two holding midfielders against SPFL dross, right? So then he did actually exactly what I think myself and a lot of folk have been really crying out for him to do, is get some pace on, get the ball down and run. He picks this really, really attacking lineup. And nothing changed, in my opinion. Absolutely nothing changed until the moment that Malik Tillman decided that he was just going to do it himself. Up until that point, actually, his end product had been really poor, but he goes and scores a really lovely goal. So it's concerning that it suggests that regardless of the style or of the tactical setup that Gio's going for at the moment, it doesn't seem to actually be having that much of an effect on the pitch. Now, I don't want to sort of jump to conclusions or read too much into that, but it worries me that therefore the players aren't buying into what he's telling them. Like, if they're going out regardless of the setup, regardless of the instruction, and they're doing the same thing, and it looks as turgid and as boring and as stiff as it did yesterday, my concern is that the players are not buying into the information that they're getting from the manager, that they're not necessarily playing for the manager, and that's possibly what worries me more, because with players the calibre that we have, we will continue to pick up points. It won't be pretty, but we would do so. But if the players aren't playing for the manager, then that gives me cause for concern.
No, you've made a couple of good points there, and I think it is worrying. As I say, how tactically we hear that Gio's sort of tactically fluid, which I think is a positive. But I think every manager needs to have his own style initially, and then you can be tactically fluid within that. Iain, how about yourself? What did you make of the performance yesterday, and just touching on Gio's tactics there as well?
Well, I mean, the performance obviously was flat, to say the least. I mean, it was, it was a struggle to watch it, and it was a struggle for the players to get through it. I suppose the question is it the players themselves who are the problem, or is it the management and the tactics they're taking, or is it a combination of both? I mean, that's probably where the biggest problem lies. Maybe as Ross says, the manager's vision is not getting taken on by the players, and they're not following the instructions, or they're not able to follow the instructions in some way. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm at a sort of stage with Gio. I mean, I wasn't a massive fan of his before he came. I wasn't hugely enamoured of the idea of him being the manager, to be honest. I had some doubts about it, and that's, I don't want to sort of be one of these "I told you so"s, but I mean that is kind of how it's panned out a little bit to some extent. I mean, last season obviously was in Europe anyway was good, but that almost disguised the sort of bigger issues, and I just wonder now whether he's got the appetite to keep battling for to get the players on side and to come up with the approach that needs to be to turn things around a bit. I mean, to be fair, we're sitting 2 points behind at the moment, and we're not out of sight by any stretch of the imagination. But you could almost argue that's a case to say, well, now's the time to make the change because before it gets too late. But yeah, I mean, it's obviously a concern the way the games are going, and with the European games as well, the overall context is pretty worrying.
Yeah, I think certainly in terms of the performances and it just seems a lot of the time like the tibbiness of the players, especially your forward-thinking ones. Arfield recently, for whatever reason, has been very, very poor. I know a lot of people had maybe concerns about him getting a new contract. I think, to be honest, when you think about it, the fact that we never signed what you would deem a sort of proper midfielder in the summer, and all the injuries that we've got, kind of means that looking back, if we never even had Arfield there, then what else would we be playing? But he's actually started, I think, the last 4 games now, which, I think when you're relying on a player at his stage in his career to sort of play the last 4 games in the high intensity that they were going to be at, I think it's also a concern as well. We definitely need reinforcements. I think the question is, what are those reinforcements going to be? I think as well, obviously, you touched on it, Ian, about domestically anyway, whilst, yes, the performances haven't been great, we're still in a pretty decent position. If I've got my positive hat on, I'm thinking that we're 1 game away from being top of the league, but if you reverse that, we're also 1 game away from probably a disaster. And I did kind of worry that when we were 5 points behind a month or so ago, that if it did hit any more than 5 with the goal difference at Celtic had, for me, I thought it would have been, critical in this title race anyway. I mean, Ross, what's your thoughts on the manager sort of going forward? Do you think that he is the right man to keep the job going forward, certainly for the rest of the season?
I honestly, personally, no, I don't. But replacing him now would be a very un-Rangers thing to do. Rangers, throughout the history of the club, are famous for having a low number of managers, a comparatively low number of managers. We are a club that gives managers time and loyalty, I suppose, in a lot of respects. So I don't see, as we continue to pick up points, I don't see any changes happening. And I think I think it would also actually put more pressure on the board if they were to make that decision. The board is clearly under pressure anyway, and there's a lot of discontent. Whether that's rightly placed miscontent or not, there's criticism being levelled at the likes of Ross Wilson, Douglas Park, Robertson, even James Bisgrove, right? And I think getting rid of the manager now probably heaps more pressure onto certain individuals, because it looks like they've hired the wrong guy 12 months ago, and now they've got an even bigger decision to make about who would you go for next. But that being said, and it's easy for me to say this because I've got absolutely nothing to do with it, I don't see the roadmap for this improving at the moment. Now, clearly we had, go back to before the Liverpool game, we had 2 very good results, 2 4-0s in a row, against decent sides. Hearts, one of the better sides in the league, and St Mirren, in very, very good form for compared to their sort of recent history this season. They're doing really well. So 2 4-0s in a row that, in a way, were uncharacteristic for us this season. They were out of character. The victory against Motherwell yesterday is unfortunately really typical of the style of performance that we've been putting in this season. I'll admit I'm very hurt and wounded by what happened on Wednesday last week. That it was embarrassing. It was gutting to watch. I drove up from London at 9 o'clock on Wednesday morning. I watched the game at Ibrox, and I had a meeting back down in London at 1 o'clock, so I was back in the car at 4:30 a.m. So to do all of that and watch us lose 7-1, that stung a lot. So personally, I feel quite bitter towards our management, to be honest, at this point. So I don't see things changing. I see Gio trying to tweak tactically. I see Gio trying different players. He still, I think you alluded to it a moment ago, still doesn't seem to know his best side. He still doesn't seem to know if it's Matondo or Tillman or Scott Wright or Fashion Sakala. Unfortunately, I don't think any of them have really shown themselves to be worthy of a Rangers starting spot week in, week out. Much the same could probably be said about Ryan Kent as well. So he still doesn't really know who he wants to play. There still doesn't seem to be a defined style, regardless of the tactical setup. So that's what worries me the most. I don't see how it changes without changing the manager, and yet I feel that pushes the board into a really, really uncomfortable position.
Yeah, I think what you've just mentioned there, Ross, I think that shows the dedication of a lot of Rangers fans, sort of the risks and the sacrifice that you're willing to make, especially when you come and you see a driven like that Wednesday. So I certainly wouldn't have wanted to be in your position, coming back home sort of Wednesday night, Thursday morning. But I think in terms of the manager, look, he alluded to something after the Dundee United game, which I thought was very interesting, because obviously after the Dundee United game, the mood in the press room as well was really, really sort of, they genuinely thought he could have been out the door. Maybe not thought that he could have been out the door, but there was people that were maybe going, well, I personally don't know if this is the man to take us forward anymore. But Gio did say in that interview, like, obviously they were holding on towards the end. He went, last season, those are the type of games that we either lost or we drew. And off the top of my head, I kind of thought, well, that's actually a good point. You know, you think about it, last season, we lost the league by 4 points. 3 games that I can name off the top of my head. Ross County away, Hearts at home, even though that was under Gerrard, and Motherwell at home, 2 games against Motherwell at home. You know, that's 8 points. And in all those games, we had leads that we couldn't hold on to. We kind of seen that happen this season again. While we're maybe struggling, you know, we've been a couple of goals up and we've conceded one back, but we don't seem to be letting them go. I think the only goal that we've lost this season to do that really was in the Hibs game. But I do think there was, you know, genuine reasons for that. I think going down to 9 men, I think Morelos is, you know, sending off. I think after that we were on a hiding to nothing, and I just think that goal was an inevitability. And I just think we were bound to drop points that day. The thing is, though, and I'll come on to you, I've seen the probably worst Rangers teams go on and win leagues in really sort of dire and uninspiring fashions. I look at Alec McLeish in 04-05 when, you know, in my opinion, Celtic's team was miles better than that Rangers team. But we got over the line in the end. I think even to Walter's second spell, that sort of last season where we had a really threadbare squad and still managed to do it. I do want to support the manager, because I do think that he is capable of doing something like that. Because, you know, I think with Gio, if you look and think about it, we'll go through a pretty barren spell for a while. Well, we might pick up results, but performances aren't great. But then, out of nowhere, out of the blue, he does something big. I think back to, you know, getting battered at Celtic Park. 2 weeks later, you go and beat Dortmund. I think the other game against Celtic at Ibrox, you lose that, and then you lose away to Braga, and then he beats Braga and Celtic in the space of a week. So this man and this team are capable of those big performances, but it's just, at the moment, you're thinking, where are those big performances going to come from? And, you know, the only one going forward I can maybe think is Europe. If he somehow manages to to get his third place in this group, which would be massive. But let's face it, Ian, the chances of that happening are highly, highly unlikely, aren't they?
Well, I mean, that, it's dependent on us getting a result in Italy and beating Ajax at home. So, what are the chances of that at the moment? I mean, like you say, he's pulled these kind of results out of the bag before, but or similar. But I think what you touched on there was quite telling, because saying you can have a bad results, a series of bad results, and then suddenly pull out a couple of really standout results. That's not really good enough for Rangers, to be honest. I mean, we need to be consistent. That's how Walter Smith won the league when they had a pretty poor team. That's how Alec McLeish managed to win that league when we were, scraping the barrel with some of the players that we had in the squad. They had a belief, and they managed to pull, consistent results out the bag, and it wasn't just a sort of case of 2 or 3 games good and then we fall away again. They just sort of managed to dig it out every week, and every week, and that's what's got to be done, and that's the only way you can win a league in Scotland when it's a 2-horse race. You can't afford to have 2 or 3 weeks where you're off form and you have poor results. You need to be winning every single game, and then it almost comes down to the Old Firm games to basically decide it. And I know it's not quite as clear cut as that all the time, but that's essentially what it comes down to. So you need to win every week, and I don't think he has that mentality, or able to translate that mentality to the players to persuade them that that's what they need to do. They have to go out and they have to win every single game. Now, I mean, maybe this season it's improved, and we're not dropping points quite as much as we were last season, which we obviously did. I mean, last season, we went a period where we were conceding the first goal every single week, and that again was, Gio actually turned that around and stopped that for a while, and we were doing quite well at the start of his tenure. But I just don't see it. I just don't see that level of consistency. I don't see that level of promise, and like Ross said, it just doesn't seem like there's that sort of path ahead of us. It worries me that's the case, but I mean, it just doesn't seem it. I'm not saying that. I'm not necessarily saying that I think he should go. If it happened, I don't think I would be devastated. But I'm not at this stage actively saying that he should be sacked. But you could argue that this is the time to do it. This is where we're not out of sight. When it's not a disaster yet. If you think that there isn't if the board think there isn't a plan ahead that is going to win the league, then now's the time to make the change rather than wait until it's too late. But I don't think that's likely to happen. Whether it should or not is another matter. But I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I think. I mean, in terms of Gio's position, I mean, I would like him to stay. I think I'm maybe getting towards your levels now, Ian, where I'm kind of going slowly but surely. Well, if he does go, then he does go. But I think in terms of realism, the board will not sack Gio unless we have an unmitigating disaster. And by the way, I would count Wednesday if we do get knocked out, which I'm sure we won't. But you need to speak about it because it's football. It can happen. I think if something bad was to happen on Wednesday, I really could see a change happening, just because I think this board aren't the type of people that sort of make changes proactively. I think they do it very reactively. And maybe if we did fall further behind in the league as well, then we couldn't get out of the group in the Champions League, then something would happen as well. But I think the more games that we win, whether it's 5-0 every week or whether it's 2-1 scrappy wins like yesterday, as long as we're winning every week, the guy's got a job as far as I'm concerned. More on the game yesterday, Ross. A player that I want to talk about is Malik Tillman. I thought yesterday was pretty quiet, and then it's like you put on a Maradona wig. It was what a goal that was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a joy to watch. I think I mentioned earlier, I felt that his end product had been quite poor in the first half. There was one relatively early on, very clear opportunity that he should have taken, and he kind of skied it well over the bar. We could talk about Tillman, say he's raw, he's young, he needs to develop a little bit more. All of those things are absolutely true. Whether that's with us or whether that's with Bayern Munich or it's elsewhere, I don't know. But it was a wonderful goal. At the same time, and I don't want to sort of give too much credence to what they were saying on Sports Sound on BBC Scotland. They made the point that if you're the Motherwell manager, there's 5 players there within touching distance of him. At some point, someone has to take the boy down, and take a yellow card rather than concede a goal. So if I was a Motherwell fan, I would be furious to concede that goal. As a Rangers fan, I see it as excellent close control. And actually, he's done what not particularly tactically astute Scottish football fans like myself want. Right, I'm not a real tactical genius or a whiz in that sense at all. And so I always say stupid things like, "Oh, get the ball down and run at them because they're crap." He actually did it. He got the ball down. He ran at defenders, and they didn't know what to do. And he took on 5 of them, and he didn't really need to do much. He kind of just ran in a straight line, and well, that's by the by. It was good close control. It was good composure. It was a lovely finish, and it was a moment of magic that didn't deserve to be in that game, because that game was so dry and dull. It was like we'd kind of imported that goal from Spain, and I felt sorry for that goal having to be at Fir Park, because it deserved better. But it kick-started us. We get a second a few minutes later, and happy days.
No, it was happy days indeed. And just a wee disclaimer, I will apologise to any Motherwell supporters that might be watching that, maybe would have liked a goal like that to be in that game. But obviously they would have preferred it for Motherwell. But I don't think many Motherwell players are capable of that, unfortunately, for them. But I mean, yeah, I thought it was a great goal. You do make a good point about the whole someone should just come in and basically take him out. And I would be raging as well if I was a Motherwell manager. I think you might have touched on that after the game as well, a wee bit, Stevie Hamill. But Ian, in terms of moving forward with Tillman, he's kind of a wee bit like this Rangers team in a weird way, because he is very quiet sometimes. He doesn't play well, whatever, and then he pops up with magical moments at times. I'm thinking about his goal against USG that kind of kick-started the comeback. I'm thinking that goal yesterday. Even I think it was a Kilmarnock game, the start of the season at Ibrox, were playing poorly, and he popped up again with a goal to give us a lead. I think he's been used, quite unfairly on the right a lot this season. The one at Parkhead in particular was just a no-no for me. It kind of reminded me of the way that Jallow was put out there in that game in February, and he was completely isolated. For me, he's a number 10. He should continue to play in that position, I think, going forward, especially with the amount of injuries that we've got to try and see the best of him. Well, how do you see him going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's a winger. There's no doubt about that. That's not, he doesn't have that the skill set, I don't think, for that. But I mean, I find him a very frustrating player, and it might be down to the fact that it's his age and he's at that stage of development. And maybe he will develop over the next few years into being a more consistent player, but we really need him to be consistent, playing maybe 3 or 4 good games in a row, and then he maybe has an off game. I don't think we're going to get that from him, certainly not this season anyway. And whether he'll be back again is a matter of debate. I mean, I remember after his first couple of games, people were saying, let's just pay the money now and we'll take him, but that soon sort of died down a bit. But I mean, he's a really good player, there's no doubt about it. And that goal yesterday, it almost made it even worse to see what he's capable of. And it was what I really enjoyed about that goal was the fact that he was willing to take responsibility. So many players get the ball, first thing they want to do is get rid of it. And I don't mean that in a good, I don't mean passing on. I mean they don't want to take responsibility for the ball. They don't want to have a go themselves. And that was good to see. He just ran and instead of even looking to pass it, he had one thought in his mind, and that was to get forward into the box and get the ball in the net. And that, that was great to see. He's obviously got the skills, but he's just at the early stage of his development still. And can we afford to have that kind of player in our team on a regular basis? And I don't think we can. So it's either we get him playing consistently well every week, or he's a bit part player. I mean, that's the reality of it.
No, absolutely. I think that was a good segue in what's going to be our next point anyway. When you're talking about players that are fully developed or need to be fully developed, but we're just going to do that after a latest message from another one of our sponsors, and that is Zenith Coins, who have got their official Rangers Club coin copy. It's a nice little gift, and each gold-plated coin has a unique serial number engraved on the outer rim, and it comes complete with a Rangers presentation box and certificate of authenticity. You can join Rangers legends and famous fans like Alan McCoy, Derek Johnson, Marvin Andrews, Tom Stolton, Gordon Ramsay, to name a few, and get your own official Rangers Club coin. And the best part, as we like to say, is you can even get a wee bit of money off. You can get 10% off your purchase by using the code GM10. That's GM10, and you can save a wee bit of money on your Zenith coin. So, yeah, in terms of another couple of players in the squad that I wanted to talk about, James Tavernier, I think his performances lately have been poor. However, I don't want to be sort of firing all cylinders and saying he's this and he's that, when I think it's quite clear to me and a lot of people that the guy's got an injury. I think the problem with Tav is his position's a wee bit of, a poison chalice, in the sense that we need Tav to be fully fit, because, the only player that we've got sort of behind him is Adam Devine, and it's either that we need to change the system completely. Although, in fairness, as I've been saying, we probably don't know what the right system is anyway, so that might not actually be a bad thing. Ross, what have you made of Tav's performances recently, and do you think we maybe could be doing with dropping them, just not because he's been performing badly as such, but just because the guy needs a rest?
Yeah, I'd certainly be disappointed to see him starting on Wednesday in the Cup. I think that would be a really prime opportunity to give the guy a rest. I think it was really noticeable against Liverpool, where to get anything out of Liverpool, we needed guys like Tav to have an 11 out of 10 evening. And he was almost conspicuous by his absence, because our European runs of the last couple of years have been dominated not only by Morelos scoring a load of goals, but by Tav bombing up the right wing, getting into good positions and getting goals and assists himself. And that never once looked likely last week. So I agree with you, Craig. I think he's clearly picked up some kind of an injury. I think that something's not right there. It's horrendous timing, of course, with Connor Goldson out for a prolonged period of time. But it does show that regardless of the manager, because it was the same under Steven Gerrard, it was probably the same under Mark Warburton, to have a successful Rangers side at the moment, we need a fit and firing James Tavernier. And when we haven't got that, it leaves us really, really exposed. I think of course it leaves us exposed at the back. He is first and foremost a defender, but it takes away one of our most potent creative attacking threats. It's been a hallmark of this Rangers side for many, many years now, is James Tavernier getting himself into advanced positions. And if he's not fit enough to do so, or he's carrying a knock and it's not happening for him, it really fundamentally changes the way that we play. And you're right, we don't have Nathan Patterson to rely on anymore. I think 12 months ago, this would have been a really, really easy decision. Tav would not have played against Motherwell. Tav certainly wouldn't be playing against Dundee in midweek. I have no fear about the likes of Adam Devine coming in to play against a team such as Dundee. We've seen him a couple of times before, and that doesn't concern me or worry me in any way. But longer term, we need... Yeah, I mean, you could see that the importance that the fullbacks have. Borna, for example, yesterday, for all the criticisms we can make about Borna Barisic, the style of play there was so apparent. It was overlapping with Ryan Kent getting balls in the box. We need the same down the right-hand side, and if Tav's not able to do so, it does fundamentally affect the way that we play.
Yeah, you've made a good few points there, Ross. I think it is a concern that, really the only specialist player that we've got in that position is James Tavernier. I think, obviously, at left back, we've got guys like Bomber, who I think's possibly been our best player this season. He's certainly one of our better ones anyway. And obviously we brought in Yilmaz for quite a hefty fee. So I think when you look at it, if Bomber was to be out injured for a few weeks or whatever, yeah, you can maybe play Yilmaz in there and you don't really have any fear about it. Adam Devine, I think, as you said, yeah, I don't have a problem with him playing on Wednesday. I'll be shocked if he doesn't play. But sort of moving forward, you do kind of fear that, you know, is that the best we can do if we've not got a Tav there? And I think even the problem with maybe signing a sort of backup or a makeshift right back or whatever to replace Tav is that I think the reason we done it for Barisic was because, well, if you look at his performances last year, I think it was clear that we needed someone in now that could play at left back anyway in case his performances dipped. It just so happens that he's played well this season, so he's kept his place. But we know if he does dip in and out of form, that Yilmaz is there. I think the opposite with Tav is the guy is consistently a top player for us, and he's consistently never injured as well. So it's kind of like, can you really go and spend 4, 5, 6 million quid on like a backup right back when they're not going to play?
Yeah, well, add to that, he's a captain and he's a talisman. So all these things all add to. So you want, I suppose in an ideal world, you want a Nathan Patterson who's coming through the ranks to be the backup for him, who you can rely on. Devine, we don't know yet, whether he has got what it takes to play consistently at the top level. I suppose the only way you find out is by throwing him in there. But I would be fearful, of having to rely on him in a Champions League game against Napoli or Ajax. To be honest, I mean, maybe I'm being unfair, but I don't think that's fair, and it would be fair on him to put him in that position. So, if we can avoid it, so ideally you want Tav to be on full cylinders. But like has been said, is he's clearly struggling. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It looks like he's carrying an injury, or there's something definitely not right there. But who would you get? Most people looking at that are going to say, well, as a player, my chances of breaking through into the team ahead of him are pretty slim because of everything we've just spoken about. So you would struggle to get somebody even to come in at that level anyway. I think with Barisic, I think most people probably assumed that he wouldn't be playing this season at all. And to be honest, I didn't even think he would still be here at this stage of the season. I thought he would have been sold in the transfer window. And he has played okay to the point that he's probably been difficult to drop. But that wasn't the case. That's not been the case with Tavernier. What I mean is, there was never any doubt that Tavernier would be the first choice right back, and that he's going to hold on to that position unless something goes badly wrong. So, it's a worry that if he's now struggling, and if we lose him for any period of time, given the other injury issues that we've got at the moment as well. I mean, it's not just the positional issues; it's the experience and the character of the players that you don't really want to be missing from your team. And he would be a major miss.
Well, you're right. He would be a major miss if he was to be out for any sort of period. To be honest, let's face it. Moving on then to another player who it certainly seems does have competition for places, but he just doesn't seem to get dropped. I think he got dropped a couple of weeks ago, but that's been about that, and that's Ryan Kent. I mean, I'm going to try and be as polite and nice as I can here. I mean, this guy is really, really starting to annoy me now. Just, everything that he touches seems to be turning to, what? I mean, it's like the man seems a shell of, what he used to be. He doesn't seem to want to be taking players on. I think the one thing that we know Kent had his bad performances last season. I think we all kind of accepted that. But the one thing that, I used to do to stick up for him was say that, he works hard and etc., etc. To be honest, I think that's kind of went this season as well. I don't know if it's because he's in the last year of his contract and he wants to move away. I don't know if it's a confidence thing. I don't know what the problem is. Only he knows that, and maybe, other people at the club. But Ross, is this a player that you think we should be looking to try and just get whatever we can in January and maybe just get him off the books, or is it someone that you would like to see at least until the end of the season? You never know, maybe you can give him a new contract.
If the option of a new contract is there, I'd still actually want that contract to be signed. We've been here before with Ryan Kent, maybe not quite so extreme and quite so badly, but I believe he's the ultimate confidence player, and his confidence is clearly low. He's not scoring enough goals, not providing enough assists. It does seem that certain defenders have worked out what he's going to do. Like, he's going to try a wee step over and cut inside, and it's relatively easy to position yourself and stop that. So it becomes a really difficult one, because at the moment he's not really got any saleable value. This season he's been poor, and we probably spoke 2 or 3 years ago about figures upwards of £10 million that we could be getting for Ryan Kent. At the moment, no one's coming in anywhere near that kind of value. So that puts us in this awful position now as we go into the January transfer window, giving him 6 months left on his deal. There needs, clearly within the club, there needs to have been an honest conversation with him to find out what he wants. If he wants to move on, then yeah, you probably do take whatever you can get in January, because he's not really, again, providing us with much value. I would like to think that we are going to recruit additional attacking wing play type players, creative players in the January window ourselves, regardless of what Kent does. So if Kent wants to move on, then I would rather he go in January than he goes for nothing in the summer. However, if he does go for nothing in the summer, we always seem to sort of view these things as like we've really messed up and we should have done better. We should have got rid of him, and maybe that's true, but it is still, trying to put a silver lining on it. It would still be a lot of money off the wage bill that could be reinvested elsewhere, and maybe that's just all it needs to be. He's not provided what we need him to provide this season, but like I said earlier, we have seen this before with Ryan Kent. I'm sure this happens every 12 to 18 months with this boy, where he needs to be dropped. He needs to take 3 or 4 games on the sidelines, and then he comes back reinvigorated and ready to fight for his place again. He needs a break, I think, both in terms of a break from playing, but he also needs to catch a break. Like, he needs something to go right for him. He needs one of his long shots to come off. He needs one of his sort of skill moves to lead to a good assist. And I think it will start to pick him up a little bit again. But ultimately, you're sitting here now as a fan watching him and just getting more and more and more frustrated. And I think, given the backdrop of everything else that's going on at Rangers, all the other frustrations that we have at the moment, as a fan, you don't feel that you want to give him too much sympathy right now. Like, it's just a really quite toxic feeling around the boy at the moment, and personally, I think that's a bit of a shame. But sorry, that's a long-winded way of saying I'd still love to see like that player, the Ryan Kent we saw 2 years ago, the Ryan Kent of the 55 winning season. It's the same guy. He's still there. Whether it's confidence or something else, I'd still love him to sign a new deal, and I would believe he could get back to those levels.
Yeah, I mean, I think you made a great point there. I mean, you're right in terms of he is the ultimate confidence player. That is what he needs to sort of go on and feed off. I mean, I also think you made a pretty interesting point there about the sort of possibly losing him in the summer, and I know a lot of people saying, that would be a disaster, this, that, the next thing, because he costs so much money. I mean, I think the counter argument to that would be it costs us £7 million, but we've kind of got £7 million worth of fun at him. I think certainly some of the big moments that he's delivered in the past, I'm not going to sit here and say that Ryan Kent's been a bad player for Rangers or he's been a waste of money for everything, because I think the moments that he's provided is worth over the last 4 or 5 years, if you include his loan deal. I think have far outweighed the sort of negatives that you're getting sort of here and now. But no, I don't think it would be a disaster to lose him for nothing in the summer. But I do think that there needs to be a decision made by someone. I've got no doubt that a Leeds or an Aston Villa would come in January and offer us something for Kent. Now, however much that may or may not be, I don't know. But let's just say maybe £2-3 million. If you're lucky, someone comes in with that. I would rather, if he doesn't want to be here, if he's not going to sign a new contract and that's affecting his performances, as far as I'm concerned, you take the £2 or £3 million or whatever it is and you reinvest it in, maybe a a 20, 21, 22-year-old that might cost 2 or 3 million quid as well, who, wants to be here, you're going to be able to sort of have a project type thing with him. Someone kind of similar, I think, to Rabbi Matondo, and actually looking on it now, I think whilst Matondo's performances haven't been amazing this season, I think he's clearly a guy who prefers playing off the left as opposed to on the right. I've got a sneaky wee suspicion that Rabbi Matondo might have actually been brought in to be mooted as a sort of long-term successor to Ryan Kent over on the left-hand side. Is that something that you feel might have happened, Iain, as well?
Well, it's possible. I mean, what I do think is that Kent's time is probably done, really, at Rangers now. I think every player has a shelf life, and every player has, comes to an end. That time comes to a natural end. And I think with Kent, we're probably at that point. I think a new contract now, I can't see it invigorating them and making them suddenly turn his performances around. I think we've just sort of reached a point where that's it. And I'm not going to necessarily criticise him either, because everything he's been a great contributor over the years. Frustrating again sometimes, but I mean he's like you say, the good has outweighed the bad by far. So I would say go. If we can get money for him in January, we take it. If not, he goes at the end of the season. But I don't know about in terms of Matondo. I don't know. I mean, whether he's it felt to me almost like he was just a sort of stopgap player. I don't see him being someone that we're going to be sort of looking to for years to come. Again, maybe I'm wrong, but he's not. He certainly hasn't filled me with excitement so far. I mean, he's had some decent performances, but he's not set the hell out of light by any stretch of the imagination. But I've no idea what the thinking was behind him being brought in. But I do think that there was possibly a feeling that Kent wouldn't be here this season either. I think there was maybe a suspicion that he would have gone before the January transfer window. Maybe even a hope that he would have gone before the the summer transfer window closed. Maybe even a hope that would be the case. And either no one's come in for him or no one's come in with an offer that he was interested in. But yeah, I do think he's probably reached the end of his time here at Rangers, and probably the best thing for everyone is that he moves on either in January or at the end of the season. In terms of the short term and whether he should be playing, I don't think there's any point in playing him. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of somebody like Wright or even Matondo at the moment, but neither of them have been any worse. Their overall contribution isn't any worse than his has been this season. So you might as well just give them the chance and see what they can do. And then if that helps Kent, buck him up for the rest of the season, then fine. If not, then what have we lost? Because he's certainly not doing it at the moment.
Yeah, that's the thing that really sort of frustrates me and confuses me the most. It's like we know Kent's playing badly and he's been doing it consistently for quite a few months now, but the guy just seems undroppable, despite the fact that we do have 2 or 3 players there that that can, in theory, step in for him. I mean, we kind of discussed Tavel, and it's like, well, Tav's in a position where, even if he doesn't play to his best every week, he's still going to keep his place in the team, but he does give his best every week, Obviously, you expect that for a Rangers player, never mind the captain, but, that's kind of maybe a good comparison to me, because I've got a player in Tav there who clearly is undroppable. We all know that, but yet he still goes in and puts in the performances week in, week out. Whereas we can, it's like there's 2 or 3 players, in and around that vicinity, that position, and it's like the performances just aren't there. I mean, as you said, Iain, it's like, we've got Scott Wright there, we've got Matondo. These are guys who, even Sakala as well, we've seen him play off the left. I mean, these are people who, maybe Rangers fans haven't exactly fallen in love with them so far, but, they're our players, and they're going to be our players for a pretty reasonable period of time, for another couple of years at least, on paper. So the way that I'm thinking is, why would you sort of go with that instead of a guy who is going to leave eventually? So it seems. I mean, Ross, just finally on Ken, just ask your opinion on this. I mean, do you think maybe the reason that Gio wasn't dropping is because he is capable of just producing those big moments? And do you think it's maybe a sentimentality thing where he's maybe thinking, well, he's a wee bit short in confidence, but he will get it right one day?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I think that the potential performance you're going to get from Ryan Kent is greater than the potential performance you're going to get from Scott Wright or Ravi Matondo. I honestly think it's as simple as that. You're kind of there going, at some point he's going to have a good game. Because also, Ravi Matondo, Malik Tillman, Scott Wright, Fashion Sakala, let's not pretend that they're all consistently banging out 7 out of 10 performances. Each and every one of those has had substandard performances in the last 3 months that are equally frustrating and to a degree play themselves out of contention as well. So unfortunately, Gio doesn't have the luxury of a consistent winger on either side, the left or right. And it goes back to that old argument, if they were more consistent, they wouldn't be playing for Rangers. I accept that they wouldn't be playing in Scotland. But I feel that with consistent inconsistency in the wide positions, he has to choose the guy who's got the potential for the highest calibre of performance, and that still is Ryan Kent, in my opinion. So I don't think it's anything more than that. I think he's simply going, at some point, this guy's going to have a good game, and when he does, it will be a really, really good game, and let's hope it's today.
Yeah, made a good few points there, Ross. So that's us kind of finished on the game yesterday. We do have a game coming up on Wednesday that we'll touch on just before we finish up today. Dundee at home in the League Cup. It's got all the hallmarks of one of those sort of perfect games on paper. It's at home against a lower division team who's not doing very, very well. I think we all know that it's a must-win. I think, as we know, if the game at Rangers is a must-win, never mind a cup game at home to Dundee. Not a very good Dundee as well. But obviously, you need to go out and you need to work for those victories. You don't get them handed on a plate. Personally, I think this is another opportunity very similar to the Queen of the South game to see not just fringe players, but youth players come in. I think Leon King's probably a cert to start, as is Charlie McCann. I don't know if he'll go with Robbie Ure up front again, like he did for Queen of the South. I know he did do very well and scored and whatnot, but I think, with Sakala coming back into form, I think, Roof may or may not be in the squads. I think we'll be looking to maybe get more game time out of him, maybe even Morelos to get him up to speed as well. And hopefully with the way that Tav's going, we see Adam Devine come in for him and put in another good performance. Ian, in terms of the team, I noted down earlier, do we make a lot of changes and whatnot, or do we just sort of play it safe in inverted commas? And I said safe because, well, the Rangers sort of best starting 11, as we know just now, have really been pulling off top draw performances. So will it really be safe? But at the end of the day, as a cup game, it's a quarterfinals. Clearly it is a must win because if you lose, you're out the cup. So what do you think? Do you think we should make a few changes? I'll just go with our strongest 11 for that one.
No, I think we should make some changes, but I don't think you want to make 11 changes, obviously. So, I mean, it's getting the balance right, isn't it? Yeah. Because, the consequences of losing this game would be massive, absolutely massive. I mean, you mentioned earlier, would a defeat against Dundee in this game mean the end of Van Bronckhorst's career? I think Rangers, I think probably would. I think if we lost, he would be sacked. And obviously that's going to be in the back of his mind when he picks his team. But at the same time, if you can't play fringe players or younger players in games like this, then when are you going to play them? So, this is the opportunity we've got, the only opportunity these guys to see whether these guys are up to it or not. So we have to give them, some of them, a chance. But wholesale changes, it's always risky. If you, seen it before in cup games under Gerrard, where we lost games that really we shouldn't have lost, and largely that was down to making what you might call unnecessary changes to the team. So I think you have to be careful, and you have to have a core of experience and reliable players in there. But yeah, let's see the Devine coming in. Let's see McCann play. And some of the other guys like Sakala, who are not youth players, obviously, but are not necessarily starters. I would also be inclined to play Morelos on Wednesday. I think he needs more game time, and he needs to. It's a perfect opportunity for him to bag a few goals. I mean, if he can, that would be a massive for him, and I think that's we really need to see Morelos backfiring in all cylinders. I know Colak's been good, but I think at their best, Morelos would be by far the first choice between the two of them. So I want to see him playing at his best. Let's hope he gets back to that, and give him a chance to get some confidence and score some goals.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness to Morelos, he's got a pretty decent record against Dundee at Ibrox over the last few years. So yeah, I do hope that he starts as well. I mean, Ross, at the end of the day, we could all sit here doom and gloom about Rangers and whatnot, but this is a game at home against lower league opposition, a chance to go to Hampden, a chance to win another cup, and at the end of the day, we've been starved of trophy success over the last 10 years or so. And it's something that we crave. I think a lot of people, when you look at it, you maybe think, if you had to sacrifice one out of the three domestic trophies, I think most people would say the League Cup. But at the end of the day, I'm not wanting to be sacrificing anything. It's like in Jungle Run, you don't want to go in and just win the wee bronze statue. You want to go in and go to the golden statue and bring them all back. That's what I want to do every year with Rangers. I want us to go play our best team on Wednesday, the best team that we can, go out, put on a good performance, maybe get the confidence back and go on and win this cup. But I think at the end of the day, that's what we all want here, isn't it?
I mean, first things first, I'm afraid I have no idea what Jungle Run is.
Come on.
I'm glad I'm not the only one. What the hell?
You must have seen Jungle Run. Come on, it was brilliant.
No idea. No. The League Cup is the one that's eluded us since we came back up to the top flight. We've not won it for years and years and years. We've come very close. So there's no excuse for not putting in a professional performance and getting to Hampden. As a Rangers supporter, we demand, it's such a cliche and I hate saying it, but we demand and expect victory in every single game. There's a lot of pressure on this game because it's a potential banana skin. But there's simply no excuse. Dundee are not in good form. You look at the league table for the Championship, I think they're fourth, but they're only off sixth by goal difference. It's not a particularly strong league there. We have simply got no excuse for not comfortably and professionally. Look, I'm not one of these guys who says we should win this 5-6-7-8 nil. But this should be a comfortable and professional job on Wednesday. And quite frankly, I don't think we should expect anything less.
No, absolutely. And I think that's a good point to wrap up on there. A wee bit of positivity, as we all love on this podcast. Thanks very much, guys, for tuning in today. As we say, apologies for the slight delay by a day, but we hope you've brightened up your Monday a wee bit further. So, Iain, thanks very much for joining me.
Cheers. You're welcome.
Ross, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
No worries, I've been Craig Ray, and just to remember as well, you can go over to a brand new website over at www.gersnet.co.uk where you can see all the new features that has to offer. And we'll be back on Friday with the Dundee review and also a preview of the Livingston game. So thanks very much, guys, for tuning in at home. As we say, thanks very much. I'm Craig Ray, and thank you for listening. Bye-bye.